Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Dave Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing today?
Good, good.
It's one of us.
Big day for Oilers controversy, to say the least. Somebody just started up their lawnmower out there. Bruce, I don't think any of us became hockey fans to discuss major issues of sexual abuse, alleged sexual abuse, serious matters of possible criminality, of the ethics of those kinds of things, and to dig into that. We're hockey fans because we love hockey, and we love the players, and we love the team, and we like the coaches and sometimes the GMs, what they do. So this is a really hard thing to talk about. And I covered major crimes for the Edmonton Journal for 20 years, and I was sick of it in the end. I never wanted to look at another case like this in my life, but here I am. This is Stan Bowman was just hired by the Edmonton Oilers as GM. Stan Bowman was wrapped up in one of the biggest cases of, let's say, sexual misconduct. Not by him, but because he was managing this, and he didn't handle it correctly. That the NHL has ever seen. This was a major case, and it happened in 2010. A Chicago Blackhawks player, Kyle Beach, was there's varying reports about what happened, but Beach said at the time, and has since settled a lawsuit with the Blackhawks over this, that he was sexually assaulted by a video coach on the team, Brad Aldrich. Aldrich was later convicted of a case of sexual misconduct involving a student at the high school where he was involved in the sports team a few years later. So this is really serious stuff, and we usually don't talk about this on this podcast, but here we are. So there's been I think it's fair to say, a huge negative social media reaction to this decision on Twitter and other social media sites. I did a poll, and I just want to check what the latest results are on the poll, because I was asking Oiler fans, let me see here, let me just get to it. Are you okay with the Edmonton Oilers' decision to hire Stan Bowman as GM? And right now we have 1,788 votes, and 40% are okay with it, 60% are not.
Surprised it's that close.
I think if you did a poll of season ticket holders, it would be 60-40 in being okay with it, if not more like 70-30. I find, just from talking, like the people on social media are much more politically aware and more politically active, and more likely to take a stand on something like this against Bowman than the general Oilers fan base, who are generally less critical of everything with the Oilers. They're more accepting of the GM's moves, of the coach's moves, of what the team's doing. They're fans of the team, and that's their fundamental frame for looking at the team, and they support team management. So I think that with the actual ticket buying public, that it'll be much higher support. But I'm not. It's 40-60 on Twitter, which is actually pretty close, considering the outrage and the genuine outrage from many people about this hiring.
I heard of other polls might have been running as much as 20-80, but I think that would be somewhat follower related. And I can't say, as I don't know how many thousands of tweets there are today. I've only read a fraction of them.
You'd have to see the sample size.
Yeah.
And I agree that a lot of it can be related to who's following you on Twitter. I'm just putting it out. Okay, Bruce, why don't we start with, so there was after this this incident happened between, we'll just call it the incident between Beach and Aldrich, because there's been no court case, there's no conviction on this case. There was findings from an independent investigation, which was paid for by the Blackhawks. So there was a law firm headed up by a former U.S. prosecutor, I think his name's Reed Shar. The law firm Jenner & Block did an extensive report where they interviewed more than 100 people. And to me, Bruce, the report comes off as extremely credible. It doesn't, other people may not see it that way, but it seemed like they went out of their way to try to get to the bottom of this. And were pretty thorough. Other organizations, I think, have also looked at it, because this guy Aldrich worked at other places, and they're also under the microscope. So I haven't seen any serious challenges to the credibility of this report by Jenner and Block. I think it's probably the best, if you want to understand what happened, it's the best place to start, at least. There may be critiques of it that I'm unaware of, but it looks like it's generally accepted as credible work. And I think it's best to, we'll break this down in two ways. What Stan Bowman did wrong, we'll start with that, and what he didn't do wrong. Because there's much of the most negative reaction I'm seeing on social media is fueled by what I would say are just incorrect facts about the case and incorrect facts about what Stan Bowman didn't do. So what Stan Bowman got wrong is pretty straightforward. He didn't do enough himself as second in command of the Blackhawks organization and as head of hockey operations to get to the bottom of this in a timely manner, and make sure a proper investigation was conducted, and make sure that the player, that Beach himself, felt cared for, protected by the team, and that the Beach himself felt that justice was being done on his behalf. Because he didn't feel any of those things, Kyle Beach, for years. He felt horrible and terrible about this, not just what had happened, but about the Blackhawks response. So the incident itself, Aldrich is a video coach, and what Beach says happened is he essentially coerces him into having sexual activity between the two male adults, and he utters, Aldrich says, if you don't essentially do this, you're going to be in trouble making this hockey team because I have a lot of clout around here. Now, this gradually gets out among Blackhawks people in the Blackhawks organization, and Bowman hears of it. And the first response is correct. They call a meeting. They have a big meeting. They have a video. They have the team's psychology counselor go interview Beach about what happened. Their team's, the mental coach of the team, go interview Beach what happened. He comes to the meeting and tells the management team what's just happened. Now, this happens on the eve of the Chicago Blackhawks winning, I think, Game 7 to make the Stanley Cup Finals. So it's a moment of high emotion and jubilation in the Blackhawks organization. And then they're dealing with this. It's the first time they've been in the Stanley Cup playoffs. For many of these people, it's the first time in their life. And for the organization, the first time in about 20 years to the Stanley Cup final. So Stan Bowman's recollection of the meeting is that what they hear is that a coach has improperly hit on a player. This video coach has improperly hit on a player, tried to get him into bed. And Bowman's recollection isn't that there was any, in that meeting, there was not a mention that there had been any kind of, there's no allegation of a sex assault in that meeting. He doesn't recall that, hearing that. None of the other people recall hearing that in that meeting, but the person, the mental coach, the mental skills coach from the Blackhawks, he says that he said that in the meeting. So already there's some discrepancy about what was said and not said in that meeting. Bowman's recollection of the meeting is that then the team's president, who was a very commanding, authoritarian figure in the organization, John McDonough, says, "I'll take care of this." There was also talk, we're heading into the Stanley Cup Finals, and we do not want this out of the media. We don't want anything upsetting the team. We don't want anything to happen. We just want to, and the team president says, I'll take care of this. Bowman's recollection isn't that it would be dealt with after the playoffs, though, just that there was going to be something ongoing. It was going to happen, and McDonough was going to take care of it. So his
With
boss,
McDonough being his boss, Bowman's boss, and the president of the hockey team, correct?
correct, and a very, by all accounts, again, and this was stressed by the investigators, a very imposing figure, very dominant.
Yeah.
McDonough. He's the big guy, and he calls the shots, and he says, this is what's going to happen.
I'll handle it. Leave it to
Correct.
me.
So Aldrich keeps working. Beach is still there playing, and Aldrich is still there. He's working the next three weeks. And the Blackhawks going to win the cup. Aldrich gets he's celebrating with the cup. He gets a Stanley Cup ring. He celebrates with the cup in his hometown, I believe. But after the playoffs are over 3 weeks later, the Human Resources Department of the Blackhawks digs into this. And they go to Aldrich and they say, there's these allegations. You have a choice. You can either resign or we will investigate this. And at that point, Aldrich decides to resign. So the Blackhawks never investigate this. So, and there's never any public attention of this because the Blackhawks have not investigated this. I mean, they can't, they're not going to then go public and say, we've caught this perpetrator. Beach does not go to the police. The Blackhawks do not go to the police. No one goes to the police. So this is handled by Aldrich resigning, and there's no investigation. And that's where it ends up. And here I'm guessing, it's not addressed in the report, but I'm assuming there may have even been some kind of confidentiality clauses from all sides not to talk about this. Not from Beach, but from Aldrich and the Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
So Bowman, and I don't know this either, this would have been an interesting thing to ask, to know from Bowman what he knew then. Like, did he know what the deal was with Aldrich? That he, was there a confidentiality clause? Had there been an investigation? Okay, so that's what Bowman did wrong. He didn't get to the bottom of it himself. He didn't take immediate action against suspend the individual during the investigation. Things that, I'm not an expert on how an organization should handle a sex assault allegation. I don't know. But I do know from Beach's later statements that he was really upset and hurt, devastated by the Blackhawks response. And it struck me that what Beach was saying was valid. So it sounds like Bowman could have done more. He's not the human resources director, though, who makes the deal, resign or we investigate. That's on the human resources director. And on McDonough, I don't think Bowman would have signed off on that. So what Bowman didn't do wrong versus this, there's been a lot of allegations that members of the Blackhawks wrote letters of recommendation for Aldrich to get other jobs. And people have been very angry and lashing out at Bowman for signing these letters of recommendations. So the investigators looked into that and they found no evidence of that. They couldn't, and they contacted the places where Aldrich had gone to work in following years.
Right.
And there was no evidence at all that anyone from the Blackhawks or Stan Bowman wrote letters of recommendation for Aldrich. Another allegation now and it seems to come from Wikipedia, is that the investigator himself, Shar, in his report, blamed Bowman for keeping quiet, and that led to the sexual misconduct that Aldrich was later convicted for. But that's not in the report. That's from Wikipedia. So, an editor or writer from Wikipedia seems to have concocted that. But that's being talked about on Twitter and by people, and people are getting mad at Bowman because they say, this is in the report and this is what you did wrong. Listen, he didn't do enough. He didn't thoroughly investigate, but the report doesn't say that he is to blame for those follow-up actions. You can make a fair comment that you think that's the case, but the report itself doesn't say that. And I think that's an important distinction. So those are a couple areas where the facts diverge from what people are thinking and saying on social media about this. Bruce, any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, clearly he's complicit in not taking action. That said, I mean, a narrative is there that there was a meeting led by one man with 4 other guys in the room, 3 of whom ultimately got suspended for 33 months. Like, if this was a healthy sanction that the NHL dished out to these 3 guys, one of whom, assistant GM, I believe at the time, Kevin Cheveldayev, who did not face any kind of sanctions because I guess he was further down the totem pole. I read a while ago, but I can't remember the specifics.
I think that's fair, Bruce.
He was discharged when the other ones were not. McDonough himself. Now, remind me what happened to him.
He resigned in 2020, I think. So Beach came forward in 2021,
right? Okay.
May of 2021, and I think if I'm recalling this correctly, McDonough had already left the Blackhawks in 2020. Right. Yeah, before then.
So he's gone. The other 3 guys got suspended. But, you know, too easy narrative is that the issue came up, the 5 of them had the meeting, the boss guy said, I'm going to deal with it. The team carried on doing what they were doing, playing for the Stanley Cup. I mean, it wasn't just sort of, you know, February hockey here. And 3 weeks later, the guy was gone. And it's not unreasonable to assume they thought it was dealt with, even as obviously follow-up needed to be doing from people in, you know, leadership positions, with Stan Bowman, you know, number 2 on that pecking list behind only McDonough. And he himself has acknowledged that he did not do enough, and that he is living with, you know, his silence. And there was an excellent exchange between him and Jason Gregor at the news conference this morning about the what did Gregor call it? The destructive power of silence. And Bowman says, the biggest thing I learned from Sheldon Kennedy, who was who was also involved in this as one of the leading, if not the leading spokesman for sexual assault survivors in hockey, who said the biggest thing you learned from him was the negative power of silence and not taking a bigger role. You don't want to assume other people, meaning McDonough, are doing things. You want to take an active role and make sure that things happen that are supposed to happen. Sheldon said there's a bystander effect, and you want to make sure that you do what you can to play a part. And obviously he did not play an active role at all. He was very much passive, and that was his big mistake. What he isn't is a perpetrator. I mean, if you want to point fingers, start with the Brad Aldrich. What a pig.
Yeah, if I'm looking for people who did wrong, Brad Aldrich is at the top of the list.
Number 1 with a bullet.
It's not close, number 2, but John McDonough has like,
not good.
He didn't seem to say a lot to the investigators. He's not like Bowman, and a lot of the other people really sounded like they talked a lot. It was the comments from McDonough explaining his actions were few and far between in the report. Yeah. So the Oilers then Bowman is reinstated by the NHL. He's suspended for 2 years. There's a $2 million fine.
3 years, effectively.
Yeah,
he went in
years.
October of 21, and he's just back at the end of July of 24.
So he gets reinstated on July 1st, and immediately there's rumors that the Edmonton Oilers are going to hire him.
Instantly.
And both you and I are, I'll say what I was thinking. I'm thinking,
no.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't want to dig into this kind of. I don't want to have to form an opinion, because I know whatever opinion I have, and especially the opinion I came to, is going to be deeply unpopular. I do not want to fight people on, like, I'm not looking for a fight on this kind of issue. I know how people feel about this, like how, for victims of sexual assault, how profound this issue is and how painful this issue is.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm the last thing I want to do is get involved in a scrap over this kind of issue. But we write about the Oilers, so I'm thinking hopefully it goes away, and it doesn't go away, and in the end they decide to hire him. So in the end, Bruce, I did come to the conclusion that I was okay with the Oilers considering Stan Bowman for the GM's job, and I did it for the reasons that I've already spelled out about the actual incident and about Bowman's culpability. That he's culpable, but he's not Brad Aldrich, and he's not John McDonough. And if his testimony is correct, based on what he knew, his crime is that crime of silence, which is, I mean, when we look at atrocities of the past and major mistakes of the past, and organizations especially making huge mistakes, this is just so common in this kind of sexual abuse story, from the Catholic Church to residential schools, to all kinds of organizations who have been all this instinct not to talk about it, to sweep it under the carpet.
Beginning often with the survivors themselves not saying anything. Like, it is a very, very difficult topic to broach.
Yeah, it is, and it looks like it took Kyle Beach about 10 years, right, to finally decide he was going to take some action. So he decides to sue, and then he does so. This precipitates Bowman and Quenneville resigning from their various teams. Quenneville's gone on to Florida, and so Bowman then goes on a journey that we don't know about until today. We don't really know, last week it started to come to light, and what he does is now. And if you're cynical, you can say, well, he wants to get back in the NHL, so he'll do whatever it takes.
Well,
and I've heard that view.
Sure.
But there's another view where he realizes he made a terrible mistake and he doesn't want to repeat it. What he does is he goes and he starts working with Sheldon Kennedy, the sexual assault victim from the Western Hockey League, one of the most well-known cases. Sheldon Kennedy has become a victims advocate, probably the most prominent victims advocate in hockey circles, and maybe in Canada. So he starts working with Sheldon Kennedy, and they start working on a curriculum. And it's about sexual abuse, but it's also about the culture of teams, about bullying and hazing in hockey teams, which is, as Bowman says, far more common. And the idea is to create an environment for players where they are fond of their hockey experience. It's not something they later hate or dread thinking about. And so this is obviously very valuable work, and Bowman becomes deeply involved in it. He starts writing the curriculum, helps write the curriculum for it. He lands whatever stature he has left in the game, and he starts working with teams. And Kennedy encourages him to get in touch with Kyle Beach. And Beach is by then an assistant coach at Trinity Western University in British Columbia, assistant hockey coach of the men's hockey team. And he doesn't respond initially to Bowman, but Bowman tries again, and they strike up a relationship. So much so that Beach invites Bowman out to help teach the program to his players and to the female players at Trinity Western, teach this curriculum to those teams. So, and apparently last night, before Bowman finally accepted this job, he also talked to Beach, and the conversation was very positive. Now, we still haven't heard from Beach, but I doubt at this point we're going to get contradictory evidence. What we have heard from is Kennedy, who last week wrote a lengthy letter extolling the virtues of Stan Bowman.
3-page letter.
3-page letter talking about how far Stan Bowman has come on this subject. And so in that had a ton of weight with me, Bruce, was Sheldon Kennedy's testimony in favor of Stan Bowman in deciding that I'm okay with I'm okay with second chances. I think people, all of us, many of us make huge mistakes in life. We need second chances. It's how a society works.
Right. Well, part of how it works is you pay your debt to society and then you re-enter it somehow.
Yes.
And it's not like Bowman, didn't pay. Like, he was sidelined for 3 years, lost his job, sidelined for 3 years, and spent much of that time apparently working towards this respect group that Sheldon Kennedy champions. I'm just going to read a little tiny bit at the end of Kennedy's letter. Why am I writing this piece? I believe Stan would be a valuable asset to an organization due to his acknowledgement of past mistakes and his relentless efforts to make the locker room and game safer for everyone. He possesses the insights, knowledge, and confidence needed to lead in this area. And then he goes on to say, I feel Stan will do everything in his power to make sure what happened to Kyle Beach, who is a hero in my opinion, will not happen to anyone else. I know that wherever Stan lands, whether in the game of hockey or not, he'll be a true champion in the important area of respect. And I mean, take it at face value, but this is signed by Sheldon Kennedy, OCAOEOM, all sort of, accolades, co-founder of Respect Group, Order of Sport, Canada's Sports Hall of Fame, Order of Hockey in Canada. Like, this is not a nobody. This is a guy that's been fighting this fight for a long, long time. And, if you don't value his opinion, then whose can you value?
Yes. So, yeah, based on what Kennedy said, and now based on what Beach, I formed my opinion before I heard what Beach had said, but I just assumed that Kennedy wouldn't be saying what he said if he hadn't talked to Beach and knew what was going on with Kyle Beach. So based on that, I thought, okay, not everyone deserves a second chance. I wouldn't let Brad Aldrich coach a team.
Nope.
No.
One strike and you're out.
Yeah, for some things, that's it.
Yeah.
Should Bowman be allowed to manage a team again based on what his culpability, his actions, and then the process of the punishment that he received and what people are saying about his rehabilitation? And I just thought, yeah, I'm okay with that. I wasn't endorsing him, the Oilers signing him. That's a different decision. But I was okay with it happening. And then it did happen. And what Bowman said is, I'm not here to relitigate the past, but I do think it's important to start off by touching on my departure from the Blackhawks. I can tell you in this room, as well as everyone watching, something I've said to Kyle Beach. My response was inadequate back in 2010. I didn't handle things properly. I should have done more. That's something I regret. So that's a unequivocal to me, full ownership and apology for what happened. And I'm sure if there's holes in Stan Bowman's story, Kyle Beach would have been the person to point them out and to confront him on them. And we don't know about their conversations, but it seems like they're in a good space together, which is just fantastic. I mean, the fact that Kyle Beach seems like he's got his life in order. He's an assistant coach in a university. He's got a settlement with the Chicago Blackhawks. He's got a
family. He's got a son. He's got
some measure of justice.
Up the pieces, yeah.
Some measure of justice, including monetary justice, which is really important in this world. Mm-hmm. They made him whole for the hockey career he did not have, it looks like. That was the idea of the lawsuit.
You can look at his page on Hockey DB or any of these things, his career page. This was a guy who was a first-round draft pick, number 11 overall in 2008, Kyle Beach. And he was a terrific junior. Scored 52 goals in 2009-10. Went to Rockford Ice Hogs and played. Scored 3 goals in 4 playoff games in the AHL as a then just turned 20-year-old. And then he became a member of the Black Aces. And you can just draw a thick black line under the 2009-10 season and see how his career falls apart immediately thereafter. Like, he just never translated. that into pro. And some guys just don't translate into pro. But in this case, you can say, well, something happened in 2010, and it sure is that, it holds water that he just never made it, never got one game in the NHL. 11th overall draft pick. He just came apart for him, and I would have to think that that situation with Aldrich and all that followed was probably played a big part in that.
And other victims that Aldrich may have had in hockey. I mean, there's other people mentioned in the report.
Mm-hmm.
Black Ace #1, who has a pseudonym that way, and there was allegations
there was an
intern in
the Stanley Cup Finals that he rejected an inappropriate advance was that story. But then after Beach went on with, because he was able to walk away without any kind of cloud or stain on his record, he reoffended in 2 other places, including with a minor. And that is what has a lot of people upset.
Yeah. And rightly so. The Blackhawks organization.
I'm upset.
Really
not good enough. It's a stain on hockey as far as I'm concerned. And anyway, here we are in the epicenter yet again.
Should have had that investigation. Would have been messy.
And I do wonder, Beach was still in the Chicago organization for 4 more years after that, before he finally went over to he got, I think, traded to the Hartford organization. Then he went over to Europe. But how they managed him, and whether they ever were able to, talk to him, Aldrich was gone, but Kyle Beach was still in the org for 3+ years after that, and clearly whatever had happened, it remained under the rug. And I mean, as you say, he didn't come out and talk about it for basically a decade himself. So,
and he was harassed by other players. Yeah, he was horribly harassed by other players.
That's awful. We heard some of that when Duncan Keith came over to the Oilers, and you would have thought that Daryl Cates and those running the Oilers would have been able to judge from the fans' feedback of that maybe what they're doing today might not be all that well received. But
well, Bruce, I mean, the fans were pretty excited, about the team this year. I mean, there is upset in the day or for a week or two, but so Jeff Jackson has a decision to make this summer, and clearly a large group of fans are extremely vocal and upset about it. So here's what Jackson had to say about that. I think fans are entitled always to their opinion. They have opinions about firing coaches and making trades and everything else. I think the decision to bring Stan in is one that is in the best interests of the organizations for a number of reasons. I have to respect the fans' opinions. I think Stan's work over the next few years here will dictate how they respond. I think that we'll give them a chance. I think that some of the facts that haven't been out there are now getting out into the public. I'm not worried about it. My job is to make an elite organization and have people who are collaborative and progressive and good people. And I think Stan is all of those things. And Bruce, I actually applaud Jackson's statement here, because we now know he did due diligence. He talked to Beach himself. He talked to Kennedy. He talked to Bowman. He talked to a number of other candidates. He compared Bowman to the other candidates. And he knew there would be a negative fan reaction. That was obvious from the first moment this was mentioned.
100%.
And he proceeded. And he proceeded because he had taken all of those steps. He had come to a decision about Stan Bowman, his learning curve, and his character at this point in time. And he thought, this is what's right for the organization. This is what's going to help us win. This is what's going to help have a strong and healthy, as he puts it, progressive and forward-thinking organization. So people may disagree with that, but these are the same fans who 2 days ago were clapping like crazy for everything Jeff Jackson has done since he took over the Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
Did he suddenly become stupid today? Or
he's got the courage of his convictions. I'll give him that.
He does. And that's what I admire about him. And I think he's got a good process for making decisions. And I think we said last night on the podcast, we were talking about who's going to be the GM, and I think I said, at least, I trust Jackson. And I didn't think he was going to pick Bowman. I thought he was going to pick Botterill. I just said, whatever decision he makes, I think he's going to make the right one because he makes the right decisions. We've seen that consistently since he took over. So I'm not going to change my tune from yesterday. Right. Now that there's a surprise decision, I think I trust this guy's decision-making capacity. He makes the right decision. Now they have a public relations nightmare on their hands, but I think that Jackson is right in that the vast majority of fans will give Bowman a chance, just as they gave Zach Cassian a chance, just as they gave Evander Kane a chance, just as they gave Corey Perry a chance, just as they gave Craig McTavish a chance. People here it seems like it's in the Oilers' DNA to kind of take on this kind of case, give people a second chance, and see how it turns out. And I think the record shows, generally speaking, it can work out. It can work out both for the individual, for the community, and for the team, and for the fans. So Jackson's judgment is it's going to happen that way this time. We'll see. Maybe we're wrong. But I think the thing that I liked about Bowman's statement was he understands why people are upset, he said. And he said nothing. He doesn't expect he can say anything that will change people's minds. He's right about that. It's going to be his actions. Yeah. And he said if this kind of thing were to happen again on his team, he would handle it differently. That's the one thing he's promising. And I believe him. I believe that statement, that if he had a similar kind of situation, he will handle it correctly. And that's what we'd want. So.
Yeah, well, there's more. He's got to do more than that, though, in my view. And he's got to be out in the forefront of the issue, which is what he's been doing with Kennedy. But now Kennedy himself said on an interview on the Jason Gregor show this afternoon that he, meaning Bowman, is going to have to walk the walk. Now that he's actually back in hockey life, he's still going to have to continue and put his best foot forward on this issue. And to me, he's got two challenges. One is to win the Stanley Cup. The harder one is to get out there into the public eye and do something about it. Say, I screwed up, but this is an issue, and these are the problems, and these are what the ways that we have to deal with it. And he was asked if, again by Gregor himself in the main press conference. He says, in your position as GM of an NHL team with a passionate fan base, it is a big problem in society. Are you going to be able to use your position to further the cause, to change it? And if so, how? And Bowman's answer was, I want to. There's ability to make change, to learn from situations and to grow from them. Certainly what happened to Sheldon and Kyle is terrible. Fortunately, that's not as common as other things that happen on teams. Harassment, hazing, bullying, those are probably more common. We want to get rid of all of it, he says. I want to give my time. I want to be devoted to that stuff. So I say, hey, that sounds good. Walk that talk.
Yeah, agreed.
And to the Oilers, do the same thing as an organization. Get your community foundation out there and have them working with Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton or some other organizations that deal with this issue that they've traditionally kind of shied away from. And, you've taken it on, so take it on and do it right. If any of that happens, then maybe we can look back in 5 years and say, well, there was some positive came out of it. Yeah. Right now, today, I'm pretty sour about it, I got to say.
How are you sour about it, Bruce?
As an Oilers fan, I just don't think they needed the distraction. Everything was going great. Now they got, a chunk of the fans choked and pissed off, and like 98% of fans, other team heaping abuse and criticism and there's a trending on Twitter today is Carter Hart, and all of the Carter Hart tweets are people saying the Oilers are going to sign Carter Hart next. It's like the team has now got this rep for all that Jeff Jackson talks the talk. The team's got a rep of having, some fairly guys with pasts, let's put it that way. And
yeah, they're a long way for, like, Carter Hart has a trial ahead of him. There's
I know,
all the talk about anyone signing Carter Hart is completely premature.
We'll
see
no,
what happens.
I get that, but
See what happens
it's the kind of shit that oil country is getting from outside and probably inside as well. But there go the Oilers, and I would, there was other choices for GM, and none of them had this hanging over them. So I'm a little disappointed they went this route. But that's me. Everybody has their own opinion. Everybody's got their own trigger point. Yeah. And there are a lot of people. This is a very visceral issue for them, and it's just a non-starter. Like there are people saying, "I'm never going to buy another ticket to an Oiler game, and I'm never going to buy any more merchandise." And as you put in your headline this morning, quoting terrible business decision was right in your headline, quoting the lawyer Macramella, was it?
Yeah. TSN, Forbes legal analyst, sports legal analyst. Yeah, we'll see if it's a terrible business decision.
Well, they're tempting fate in a way they didn't need to do with just about any other hire.
Completely agree, Bruce. And again, just selfishly, I didn't want to have to dig into this, and I didn't want to have to go on a podcast and say things that I know are deeply unpopular with a lot of people that will upset many people. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, unpopular. Yeah, I mean, opinions aside, just the facts of the matter are deeply unsettling. And as I said, I mean, maybe the good that comes out of it is they can get out in front of it a little bit and do something positive towards the issue. And if they can get rid of hazing, and not that they're going to get rid of it, but if there's a way to at least help bring that a little bit under control along the way, like that's a brutal imaging, bullying, harassment, all those things are awful.
And this thing, I mean, reading the report, Bruce, made me feel like sick. Made me feel like physically sick. Yeah, I didn't want to have to keep reading it. I wanted to put it down and never have to look at it again. And I did. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to write about this. And then he didn't get hired. So I start reading it, and I put it like, I don't want to read anymore. I can't read about this character Aldrich. Another word. Right. It's too upsetting. I don't want to look at it. So yeah, like I wanted it to go away, but this is part of life as a journalist. You look and read things, and you try to come up with a reasonable. Well, you try to report it fairly and accurately, what was said in the report, so other people can go through the same process of, based on the facts, not on misinformation, come to a reasonable and adult and fair conclusion about what should happen next and what's a reasonable course of action for the Oilers, for the NHL, for all of the different parties involved. And so that's why I thought, okay, I should do this, and went through the report. Anyway, that's why I didn't want anything. I'm with you. I was hoping they'd hire Lawton, Brian Lawton. No controversy, great guy. Then I was hoping they'd hire, what's his name, from Seattle.
Botterill?
What's that?
Botterill?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a few reasonable names out there.
But they hired Bowman, and I get it. Like, now, having heard the whole thing with the final piece for me was Beach, his relationship with Kyle Beach. And it would be good to hear from Kyle Beach. I don't know. I didn't reach out to him today myself. Maybe some reporters have reached out to Kyle Beach. You just never know if people are open to talking or not. He did talk about it in 2001. He did a big interview with TSN, which is online if people want to read it. Yeah, 2021. It's very moving.
Yeah, I remember at the time it was a big damn deal.
Yeah. All right, Bruce. Laboratory of this, can we?
Well, the Oilers have done the Oiler thing, and they've for the third GM in a row, they've gone out and hired a retread GM who won cups elsewhere. Didn't work with Peter Chiarelli, and it didn't quite work with Ken Holland. So let's take another swing at it with Stan Bowman.
I'm going to say it kind of worked with Ken Holland. That was
they came
overall,
close.
that was pretty
They
successful.
came close.
He took that team for not making the playoffs 2 years in a row, and they made the playoffs every year. They made the conference finals once. They made the divisional finals once, and they made the Stanley Cup finals once. So and
they did this 0 times.
They did that 0 times, and so we're still waiting.
We're still waiting, and now it's the third former Stanley Cup GM coming in to take a swing at it. But this one has a file that's different than the first two.
Yeah, he's won 3 Stanley Cups. How many? Holland won. Yeah, like Holland.
Very similar to Holland. Holland was with Detroit like 12 years or something before they made him GM. And Bowman had, several years in Chicago, and then in each case they won the cup in the first year in the corner office, and then they won 2 more.
I'm Jackson's still in charge of hockey operations at Edmonton. I think he's demonstrated he knows what he's doing. He's a sharp hockey guy. He's worked with Bowman in the past.
His client was Alex DeBrincat. I looked that up to see how would he have crossed paths with Bowman, and DeBrincat was a Hawks draft choice that negotiated 2 contracts, entry level, which would be simple, but a significant bridge contract while I was in Chicago, where that Bowman and Jackson would have had significant dealings to make that come together. So, and clearly he liked how he did business.
I haven't looked into
can't argue that.
I haven't looked into Bowman's record, honestly. Like, I've just been so focused on this other thing first, and now
he inherited almost all the core of the team that won the cup.
Well, he was part of putting it together, though, Bruce. Because
he was part of putting it together, and then he took that core as GM, and they won 3 in 6 years. And then the second 6 years, it came apart at the seams because they had started having to pay too much to keep guys like Taves and Kane around, and they wound up running into cap problems just like Holland's Red Wings did.
If we can win 3 Stanley Cups in the next 6 years, Bruce, I'll be okay. If that's the message, that he inherited a really, really good team and then took it to 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years, that's exactly the guy you'd want to hire. But again, I don't want to comment about his hockey stuff because I haven't looked into it myself. And honestly, whatever I find out isn't going to be like, it's just, what do we know in the end? There's the record, and we can guess like what trade he made and how, was the trade forced on him? How big a part did injuries play? Blah, blah, blah. It's
his so trade record. Some people are trashing his trade record, but you have to look at the context of the record, which was some of it was flat out cap dumps.
Yes.
Because when they won the cup in 2010, both Kane and Taves were on entry-level contracts, and then they came due that summer, and they both got huge raises. And the next thing you know, guys like Andrew Ladd and Dustin Byfuglien were getting traded for spare change and couch cushions because they couldn't afford to pay them all.
Yeah.
And so the trades look horrible, but they accomplished what they needed to accomplish, which was make enough cap space and keep the right core guys.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest is over the next few days, both you and I dig into his hockey record, the draft record, of the trade record, all these kind of issues. And then we come back and we can have it'll be a lot more fun. And we come back and we have a discussion about Stan Bowman as the hockey operator and how he did in that regard. So that's my plan. And that's both up our alley. So we'll do that. Bruce, let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.